Okay. All right, so I'm going to start here. And so I like to start with what is a trademark. Now, I think all of us pretty much know what a trademark is, but sometimes I do run into some misconceptions. So a trademark is going to be a word, a phrase, a symbol, or a design that identifies. We call it the source identifier of your brand. So name, logo, slogans, the names of your products. But one thing that Bath and Body Works does is a lot of their candles names, they actually register as trademarks. Two companies that I really like to highlight when it comes to trademarks is Apple and Nike. Apple and Nike have a substantial trademark portfolio that they're basically registered in just about every class that you can think of. And so what that does is it means that even if you're coming in with something that's sort of different from Apple and Nike, you're probably going to be blocked just because of the substantial brand recognition that they built up. So what can't you trademark? You can't trademark an idea. You can't trademark a concept, right? Those things are protected by different intellectual property measures. And so the importance of trademarks is going to be that it protects your brand identity and your reputation. It prevents others from using similar marks and it builds customer trust and loyalty. And so I think when you file for a trademark and you get a trademark registration, you are the only one that is allowed to use that name in connection with those goods or services. And so when you're the only one that's allowed to use that name in connection with those goods and services, you control your brand identity. You control the reputation. So I want you to think about Disney because they're very aggressive in their protection tactics, right? And so if Mickey Mouse is Disney's intellectual property, and they don't have Mickey Mouse trademark. They don't have the name Mickey Mouse trademark, and we all can use Mickey Mouse any way that we want to. If Disney wants to maintain their family-friendly image, but we're over here with Mickey, holding blunts and things like that, that's against Disney's image, right? And if they don't have the proper protection in place, they can't control what we do with their brand. Okay. And that's why it's also important to prevent others from using similar marks. Here's the other thing that you have to keep in mind. If you have a product based business, most of the time you can't make it in retail stores without having a trademark. They don't want you putting products in the store that isn't protected and somebody else can come and use the name and sell these knockoff versions cheaper than what the retail stores are selling it for. So, what can you trademark? Word marks, logo marks, slogan marks, like I said. You can trademark colors, you can trademark sounds, you can trademark smells. So, when we think about that Tiffany blue, Tiffany has that blue registered. We associate that blue with Tiffany, so they're able to register that blue in connection with their goods that they sell. Crayola recently battled the USPTO to be able to register a smell of a particular smell of a crayon. So there are a lot of different things that you can register as long as it's a source identifier of your brand. Okay. So when you're going through and you're talking about getting a trademark, it's not just filing for a trademark registration. You want to make sure that you are searching for existing trademarks. It's so important to know who is out there and what they're using and how they're using it. So sometimes you have names that are like Dove chocolate and Dove soap, right? These two brands are able to operate with the same name because their goods are different enough. There shouldn't be any confusion in the marketplace. But if I'm Dove soap and somebody's trying to register Dove for a facial cleaner, I may have a problem with that because that may cause confusion. And the USPTO themselves may have a problem with that and issue a refusal. And it's incredibly difficult to overcome refusals when people already own names, right? That's why we go for trademark registrations. So once you have a search done and you determine that, okay, this name hasn't been taken, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to file the application. So you file the application with the USPTO. The application filing fee is $350 per class. And then they will conduct an examination. It takes them about 6 to 8 months to get to applications. Then they will approve you for what they call publication for opposition, which is a 30-day period during which time anybody from the public can come and oppose your application. And if nobody opposes you, you move on to registration. Once you're registered, you do have to renew your trademarks. So you have to renew your trademarks in between your fifth and sixth year, and then again every 10 years after that, right? So that's the end of my presentation. It was very short, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing my screen. But the one thing I think we miss as attorneys when we're talking to you all is we're telling you register your trademark, how to register your trademark, what to look for in names and things like that. But what's the benefit in registering your trademark? So when you get a trademark registered, you have to renew it. And every time you have to renew it, the renewal fees just get higher, right? So for some people, they look at me and they say, well, a trademark seems like a money scam, right? It seems like I'm just pouring a lot of money into something. You have to, once you have a trademark registration, you have to look into avenues at leveraging that trademark registration, right? It's really easy to show in sort of product-based businesses. So when you see things like Hello Kitty collaborating with things like Nike, that is Sanrio leveraging that Hello Kitty brand into additional revenue. And so trademarks are essential to be that source of revenue, right? Because if you don't have a trademark, if you don't own your name, if you don't own your brand, you can't stop anybody else from using it. And so if you build up something great, right? If Tiffany builds up Tiff Touch Travel into something really big and great, and she doesn't have it protected at all, then I can take Tiff Touch Travel and I can go use her brand that she's built up, right? And use her recognition that she's built up and make money off of it, and I haven't put in any work to make money off of it. So I think trademarks are very important, and it's why I like to start with trademarks before anything else, because if you don't own your name, you can have all of those other things. You can build up a great $1 million brand, and somebody could come and register your name before you, or they could come and tell you, actually, I own that name. You need to stop using it, and you need to pay me all of the revenue that you've made, because that's actually my money because I own that name. And so that's why I start with trademarks as my sort of baseline for all of my clients.
That's fantastic. And I have a couple of questions for
Sure,
you specifically to trademark.
sure.
So, what would you say? I know a lot of people, including myself, were under the impression that if you register your business name, say through the Secretary of State, you register it on any other type of government platform. How does trademarking protect you over registering your business name with the the state?
So this is something common that we run into a lot. And so the state doesn't want you to necessarily they don't want two companies having the same name. So I'm barred in Georgia. So Georgia doesn't want two companies being ACM Law Group because they don't want the confusion when it's time for taxes and things like that. But really, those corporate structures that we set up, that's about liability. That's not actually giving you ownership of the name. So I can have ACM Law Group registered in the state of Georgia, and I do have it registered in the state of Georgia. But unless I own the name, unless I own the trademark for ACM Law Group, I don't own that name. I can't stop anybody else from using it. Yes, the state of Georgia isn't going to allow anybody else to come and register a corporation or an LLC with that name, but I can't stop anybody else from, all over the country using that name. One thing I want to point out, because you'll notice ACM Law Group isn't trademarked, and that's because ACM Law Group is what the USPTO would call a merely descriptive trademark. It's just describing my name and my services, right? It's something that I actually couldn't register with the USPTO. And you'll see that a lot of law firms that are just names aren't registered because can't register things that are merely a last name. They'll refuse you. If it's merely descriptive of your services, you can't register it. So you want to think about that as you're choosing names for your business as well.
Oh, that is good to know. Good to know. What happens should um, you broke down the timeline of 6 months for application on average.
Hmm.
Say during the time of application, someone else comes in and they also try to register for that same name, because unfortunately you have people who you share your vision with, and they want to do the same thing, and they even go as far as trying to register it in the same name as your idea. um, what happens to that individual, or what happens to your application during that process?
So the USPTO is first to file. So if you file first, what's going to happen is your application is going to go through the process. It's a lengthy process, right? So it could very well be that you file. I've personally seen an application filed one day, and then 5 minutes later, the same name filed. And so what happens is once they both hit examining attorneys, the first one that was filed, that one is going to go through the process. The second one is going to be suspended pending the outcome of the first one that was filed. So unless that person's application goes abandoned for some reason, unless that person withdraws their application for some reason, if that person goes on to get registered, what happens to the suspended application is you get what we call a 2D likelihood of confusion refusal. That's the USPTO saying that you two have the same name, the same services. There's a high likelihood that consumers will be confused between the two. You can't be registered. When it's the same name and the same services and you get a 2D refusal, that's an application killer. You're not overcoming that. You can send as many arguments as you want to the examining attorney. You're not overcoming that. So we don't even, this is why we do searches and things like that. But yes, if somebody files your name after you've already filed an application, they're just going to be held up pending the outcome of yours.
That's interesting. So, say we have Tiff Touch Travel, and then 5 minutes later, Tiff Touch Travel. Now, it's not a guarantee because I've applied first that I'm going to get that name. Um, what can be the difference maker?
So it really depends on what services you're offering, right? If you're talking about the second application that was filed.
Yes, I mean, well,
Yep.
even for the first one,
So the
I
first
mean,
one,
what
yeah,
what
if you're first,
hurdles would they possibly face to say, "Hey, you're not gonna get your application"?
okay, I get what you're saying. So this is where that search is important. The with the USPTO, there's no guarantees, right? I can't, as an attorney, I can't guarantee you registration ever. And if an attorney is guaranteeing you registration, they're lying because they can't guarantee it. Because these examining attorneys really have no set parameters that they follow. And so that's where that search is really important. But one of the ways that maybe Tip Touch Travel was filed first and then Tip Touch Travel was filed 5 minutes later, maybe Tip Touch Travel, the first one, was filed as what we call an intent to use application. And you're not actively using it, but you wanted to protect the name because you knew you were going to start using it. So there's an additional step when you file that intent to use application, and you have to file your proof of use later on in the process. Some people file these intent to use applications and they never file proof of use. And so if you don't file proof of use, your application is going to go abandoned. Now we have Tip Touch Travel that was filed 5 minutes afterwards, and your application has gone abandoned. They're going to move through the process and they're going to go ahead and go on and get registered as long as there's no, other similar marks out there barring their registration.
Wow. So those are things that, it's hard to know during the application process.
Right.
The
Mhm.
application process, when I went online, it seemed very initially, it seemed very simple, right? But what happens if you have to if your application becomes abandoned and you try to start back over? Isn't there additional fees and cost? What if you don't, you know, cross a T or dot a I in the item that you're trying to get the intellectual uh, trademark for, it seems like it could be expensive, which is why I hired an attorney.
Right.
Because those mistakes can cost me more than hiring an attorney, I think.
Right. No, they absolutely can. Let's say your application goes abandoned. The USPTO is going to give you 2 months from the time that they formally mark it as abandoned to revive it. So it's revivable within 2 months, but they're going to charge you $375 to revive it. And then, so let's say you filed that intent to use and you didn't file your proof of use. And now you've paid the USPTO $375 to revive your application. Now you still have to go back and pay the USPTO once again to submit your specimen. So you still have to submit the specimen. The USPTO, I'll say this, is a government entity that holds a coffer of fees, right? And so, like, the government shutdown was just happening, the USPTO wasn't affected. They have their coffer that they operate off of because they collect filing fees. So pretty much anything you file with them is going to have a filing fee associated with it, right?
Wait,
Uh,
wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. So I done paid 350 up front. Then I gotta pay 375 to revive it. And then I gotta pay another fee. Like this is giving me Spirit Airlines.
Can I add to that?
yes.
I tried to go through that process
Hmm.
like years ago when I was in Maryland, and it was pretty lengthy. And each step you went, there was another step that you had to turn. And then it started just overloading with, I'm like, okay. Then you start to doubt yourself because you're like, what am I doing wrong? Am I doing too many steps? So yeah, I'm glad that you're clarifying that because it is a lot like Tiffany said. And
Yeah.
to think that somebody can actually didn't know that until you said that, they can 5 minutes later do the same thing that you did. But if you don't dot all your, everything, then your application can be pretty much not approved, and the other person that probably did theirs, better, can probably get approved. Okay, that's I can't understand
Yeah,
that.
they submit a complete
That I can't
application
understand
Yes.
that.
and you didn't just because you came first.
Okay, okay, but the other thing is that's why it's important to have an attorney to do all this for you instead of you trying to do it yourself like I tried to do, and I'm like it was a lot. It was a lot.
So one thing I say is I always say this because the USPTO, they want people to file applications, right? Like I said, they live off of the fees. So they want you to file applications. So they will educate you. They do webinars and all of these things to educate you. But most people are running businesses. They're entrepreneurs, right? And some people are working 9 to 5s and running businesses. They don't have time to sit and learn all of the intricacies of a trademark application. I do this all day every day. I've done this for about almost 3 years now, all day every day, trademarks, right? So I've seen probably over 300 trademark applications, right? I've seen people get registered. I've seen people come to us with applications that they filed themselves, and we're like, yeah, that's dead. You're gonna have to go back and redo it. And one thing I want to point out, because we were talking about the application filed 5 minutes after. So it's not like just because they've gone through the process now and they're registered and your application, let's say your application was good and dead, right? And it couldn't be revived or anything, there are still avenues available to you. So I'll just use ACM Law Groups. I've been using ACM Law Group for 2 years. And let's say somebody came and ACM Law Group was something that you could register. And they came about a year later and started using ACM Law Group and filed for it. They beat me to filing, right? I haven't put an application on file, but I can always argue that I have priority of use. But once we start getting into those sorts of things, it's very expensive. It's $600 to file a opposition against an application. That's just USPTO filing fee. That's not saying that you want an attorney to represent you in a TTAB proceeding. And my hourly rate is $350, right? And attorneys only go up from there. So It's very expensive, and it's better to, when you get a name in your head, start looking into this process, start reaching out to attorneys, seeing, who you can work with to try to get this process started.
Yes, I totally agree with you because when I try to do it myself, it was like so many different steps after it, and it was like you started doubting yourself because you
Mhm.
didn't know whether the next step was really the next step you should be taking because of all the fees keep on adding on to it.
Right.
And I'm glad that you are here to help us because I try to do it myself and I got frustrated. And then to find the right attorney that's gonna, you know, walk you through the right way. I mean, I'm not saying, an attorney won't do that for you, but it's the right attorney that because I've dealt with quite a bit of attorney in my time, and not everybody's for that person. So thank you for
Right.
that.
No problem. Absolutely. Trademarks is something that a lot of attorneys think that they can add on as a sort of side hustle. It's easy, right? Like I could just throw this
You
in.
were right here in my brain because I was gonna ask the next question. What's the benefit of being a specialty attorney versus a Army Swiss knife? You do any and everything, real estate, and I've come across some attorneys who do, business, IP, and real estate. It's like, how can you do that versus um, I know you also handle some business filings and other business, um, biz, excuse me, small business support. But
Mhm.
what's the benefit of you being specialized in your niche?
So, like I said, I do this all day, every day, right? I work with trademarks. So I've become very familiar with the USPTO. So I can almost look at names and see how similar they are in goods and services and tell you, don't file that. That's too close. Attorneys who think I'm just going to add trademarks in as my, sort of side. This is an easy, whatever. Attorneys can range anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500, right, for a trademark package. So whatever it is that their flat fee is, that they think it's easy money. And then some attorneys. So when we do trademarks, we offer consults. Tiffany knows she can call me when she needs to talk to me, right? We don't charge her to call or anything like that. So we do consults. We'll talk to you about your name. We're going to be upfront. There are attorneys who don't search your name at all. And even if they search your name, they'll search to cover themselves, right? So they know what's out there, but then they don't send you anything letting you know what's out there. They put an application on file. And then if you get a refusal, they say, hey, it's going to cost you $2,000 for us to respond. Some of these attorneys just aren't as familiar with the trademark process, and they think it's something easy to throw into their practice to add some additional money into it, and it's not. There's a lot of intricacies to the process, and you have to get familiar, and you can't get familiar with it while you're covering every other area of law that's out there.
Wow. I'm going to talk to you guys about the benefit of using an attorney in strategic growth. I am your strategic growth coach, and you can't do it all. If you're trying to scale and grow, you can't do it all. And you want someone like Antoinette on your side who is specialized in her field. Pay and delegate her to do it. She will love to do it for you. She has the knowledge, the expertise, the resources to do it for you and take all that off your plate. Uh Kim Portia, how many hours would you say you clocked trying to do it yourself?
I'm gonna be honest, and like Antoinette said, they give you so many instructions and videos, and it make you think that you got the
So
confidence,
so
and so it's
plus the
yes.
training, that's your time. So
I
how much
I would
would you
say
say?
I would say I'm not gonna lie, it could take you half a day because you want to make sure that you're doing it the right way. And then of course,
So that's
like
just
me,
applying,
that's
right?
what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. And then it just kept on leading me into more stuff. Then I had to go do the research for that stuff. And I was like, and I'm like, you know what? This is too much. So me personally, I feel like it's well worth the money to invest in a patent attorney. Like, it's very important because you might miss a step and then you're paying out money that you don't even know if you really are doing the right steps to pay that kind of money. So it was
Mm.
kind of confusing to me at some point. I started off okay, but then as I got a little bit further, I just started sweating and it was just a lot. I'm not gonna and I told somebody, leave that to the expert because sometimes you start to have to say, okay, with your business, that's a question also I want to ask. Is that the same as when you register with GoDaddy? And at the time I got confused with GoDaddy and the trademark, stuff at the same time. So I'm like, okay, which one? So that's yeah. I definitely know that that's not my expertise. So I'm gonna leave that to you. Thank you, Antoinette. Thank you.
Yes. So that's a good point. That's another misconception we get is that, well, people will tell me, I'll do opinion letters for them and I'll say, "Hey, that name is actually taken. I think you should rebrand." And they'll say, "Well, I filed with the state and I got the domain name and I got my bank account in this name." I'm like, "Yes, but you don't own that name." And so somebody could come and make you change your domain name. Somebody could come and, make you stop using that name completely. So when you register these things with GoDaddy and Wix and these websites, you're taking ownership of the domain. No, we can't have multiple domains. We can't have, 1500 acmlawgroups.com, but that doesn't mean that I own ACM Law Group because I have acmlawgroup.com.
So you need a full suite of things.
Yes.
Okay, so you need the tools that um, I'm enhancing in the uh, getting your business started coursework, which is, registering, getting your tax ID. We will have a CPA, a licensed accountant, do a presentation to help you with your taxes. But then before you do all of those things, if you don't want to waste your money, because you pay money to register your LLC, you pay money to register your doing business as, you pay money to, you have to make deposits to open your bank account and get your debit card and all of that, get your business credit, you pay for your domain before spending all of that money. And someone come in and say, "Hey, I got that name. Cease and desist using my name. If you do not, you will have to pay restitution."
Exactly.
Before you do all of that, go ahead and get Antoinette to do the research and to do the trademark process for you. And she can ensure that she gets things done the right way. Can't guarantee approval because there's certain things that she's going to help you walk you through. Hey, yeah, that's not going to work. Or this is why, but she would be the person to counsel you through that versus trying to figure out spend the time, number one, watching those videos and then figuring out how you understood and comprehended the information that was given to you and not having someone to walk you through that process to ensure you're not wasting money. We just go how you, Antoinette, okay? We just
Listen,
everybody
I'm not
can
trying to
just
teach
talk.
myself. I'm not trying to teach myself how to do a patent, and that's what I was doing. I felt like I was in school because then the laws keep on and then keep on adding, and then the state that you live in, it's different. And then you're like, okay, which one am I supposed to be doing? Because got confused with GoDaddy and you see what I'm saying? So those two right there, which step are you doing first? And you know what I'm saying? So that was very confusing, and I'm glad that you're able to clarify all that. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. And one thing I want to point out is it's important. So these people sending cease and desist letter, like they're doing the right thing, right? Because it's important that when you get your trademark, that you enforce it. Because if you don't enforce it, then you're gonna lose it. So if you allow the market to be diluted with similar names, then you lose the right to enforce it. I believe it was aspirin. I want to say it was aspirin used to be a registered trademark, but they lost the right to use the name aspirin solely because they allowed all the medicine companies that wanted to use the word aspirin. So now aspirin is the medicine that we think. It has other names. So
Wow.
you have to make sure that you're enforcing your trademark rights.
So that leads me to my next question. We've gone through the application process. We have um, what after the application has been submitted and it's approved, what happens next?
So once you get a registration, right, your trademark is registered. You can use the little R in the circle, right? You let everybody know I'm registered. Now you need to monitor your trademark, right? So a lot of the attorney's offices, we offer monitoring services. Our monitoring services are $100 a month. We put you on our docket. We watch anything that comes in that looks like yours. We give you a cease and desist letter. You can fill out that cease and desist letter. You can tell people, hey, that's my trademark. You need to stop using it. Usually, what I tell people is you don't want to jump in and get the attorneys involved right away, right? Because that can kind of seem aggressive. Sometimes people just don't know. They don't know. They just picked the name, they liked it, and they went off and they started operating with it. Other times, there are people who are going to get your cease and desist letter and say, sue me, and throw it away and continue on. You may have to file a lawsuit against them to enforce your trademark rights, right? You may have to go ahead and file that lawsuit. Most lawsuits end in settlements, most don't go all the way through. So you likely won't have to fight a whole entire lawsuit, but you have to enforce your trademark rights. So you want to watch for anybody using anything similar. You want to stop them immediately if they're offering the same goods or services as you, right? Now, I can't be ACM Law Group offering legal services and then go stop somebody from using ACM Law Group in connection with bath soap, right? That's totally different. There's not going to be any confusion. But if they're operating in the same arena as you or a similar arena as you want to make sure that you stop them from using it. You want to pursue licensing agreements, right? These are very good ways to earn additional income, make some additional revenue. Franchising, right? If you have a business that can be franchised, trademarks is how you make sure that you're able to franchise it. So it's trademarks are a good source of additional revenue if you sort of learn how to leverage it into that additional revenue.
Amazing. I didn't even know that. We'll have another conversation in 2026 for sure.
Absolutely.
So, some ideas just came into my head. Um, I was like, "Oh, I've been wondering how to do that." Okay, well, he just helped me open that door. Excellent. If someone is found using my trademark and I'm registered with you through monitoring, for your monitoring and compliance. So that's another thing. You want to have invest in monitoring and compliance tools, um, such as this for your business. If you go through the whole work and paying for it, it's worth paying to have someone monitor it because you're the creator, you're the business owner. You need to be able to focus on other things. So this is a cost of doing business, which we'll talk to our accountant about. Um, so, with that said, say someone, we send them a cease and desist letter. They say, sue me, I don't care. They plaster it all over their billboard. They're doing a whole Tiff Touch Travel Awards show and they're making money hand over fist using my name. What can you do to help that person that's your client?
So this is where we want to send the cease and desist now, right? We want to send the cease and desist from the law firm. Usually when a lawyer gets involved, it starts to get people's attention, right? Once they know you're starting to invest in an attorney sending cease and desist letters, now it starts to get their attention. There are still going to be people who are going to say, I don't care. You can't stop me from using it. Throw that cease and desist letter away. Act like it was never sent. These are the people you have to sue, right? It's not fun. We don't want to litigate, right? We want to avoid litigation if we can, but we can't allow them to dilute your brand down. So if we have to file a lawsuit, we will. We'll file a trademark infringement lawsuit. We'll say they're infringing on your trademark. They've made money, right? They've generated revenue with your registered trademark. Warner Brothers just did this, and it wasn't a trademark, but it was copyright. So I'll mention it because it's IP still. But Warner Brothers just did this with a TikToker who they kept sending him cease and desist letters and telling him, you need to stop using our music. Our music is copyrighted. We're registered with the Copyright Office. You need to stop using our music. And he was laughing at them in his TikToks. And Warner Brothers got $1 million judgment against him. Now, is Warner Brothers ever going to see that? No, because he probably doesn't have that much money. But if he was making, because some of these influencers do make a lot of money off of their videos, if he was
Yeah.
making money like that, they can,
And
collect.
he very well may, believe it or not, be
And then
making
here's, yeah,
the what do you call it? It's royalties
yes.
from
And
it
then,
illegally. And
and
I've seen stories about it.
the other thing is when I get a judgment against you, it doesn't just go away because you can't afford to pay it.
Mhm.
So if you're working, I can garnish your wages. If you're not working, if you own anything, I can put a lien against your house. Once I have a judgment against you, I have a lot of options available to me. So unless you know you're just not going to work, you're never going to make any money, you're not going to own anything, a judgment is, it's something you don't want against you. You don't want your wages garnished, right? And your wages are going to be garnished for a long time if you owe Warner Brothers over
Mhm.
$1 million, right? So I can get a judgment against you for trademark infringement, and then I can start collecting on it if you own anything. And so these are avenues available to you. Yes, it costs money to enforce your trademarks, but it's worth it. And you have to think about, what is my brand worth to me, right? Is this,
Mhm.
a hobby for me? Because I tell people, if this is just a hobby for you, you don't worry about protecting it, right? Because you're going to spend more money than it's worth, because you're not planning on doing this long term. This is just for fun. But if this is my brand, this is my business, this is how I'm going to live, right? Then it needs to be protected, and you have to invest in protecting it.
Mhm. And I like what you said about the second step, because I watch a lot of court TV. They make it very entertaining these days. And you see people, they win judgments all the time. Now, the arbitration and stuff that's on TV, that's different. They
Yeah.
probably collect some of it or most of it. That's why they have a cap. It's part of the contract and whatnot. I did a little reading. um, but what I did also learn is that in civil court, um, you may win the court may award you a winnings, but you have to do a separate thing to then go collect that money that you want.
Yeah.
Okay. So even if the person is a millionaire and they said, you know, you've won this lawsuit against Wells Fargo, for example, there is a separate step and separate litigation that must happen in order to actually collect on those monies. And again, you can try to figure out how to do that on your own. How do I file a lien on someone's, property? I know they have $1 million, and why are they not paying me? Because you will see that on social media. Um, this person has XYZ money. They drive in a Lamborghini, and this person won a lawsuit against them, but they're still over here, barely scraping by. It's because they haven't successfully been able to take the second step. And sometimes that person who has a lot of money has ways to tie up their money, make it look like they don't have money.
Yes.
And this is
Yes.
why your attorney and your accountant become friends, and they
Yes.
they figure out
Is
how to find their money.
Exactly. I think one of the most important things people can do is learn when to seek an attorney, right? All attorneys aren't we don't cover
attorney?
everything, right? So
Mm.
there's an attorney that they do litigation. There's attorneys that they do, they do each do their own thing. These judgments tend to be state specific. You probably need to find an attorney in your state, right? Even if you have an IP attorney and that's federal court and we can practice anywhere, right? Because IP is on the federal level, you still need a litigating attorney in that state. So it's important to know the difference between the attorneys that you need to hire. And then it's also important to know when to bring a CPA in. Sometimes you all don't need attorneys, sometimes you need CPAs. And, this tends to be on other things like see this in estate planning and things like that, where people will come and ask attorneys questions, and like that's really a question for your CPA. So you have to know when to use each piece and what type of attorney to use at what time.
Awesome.
That is
I would
awesome.
like to give an opportunity for the mentees who have come on, if they have any questions, to ask any at this time.
I have
Here's
a
your
question.
opportunity. She charges what? $300
No,
an
no, no,
hour. If you
no,
got
no.
any questions, you better ask them right now.
No, no, I was just gonna make a statement. I think the guy that did Facebook, Zuckerberg, did that to one of his business partner. He stole the idea from him, and am I correct? And ran with it and was making money. And I think that they tried to sue him for it, but because he had an attorney, they could not sue him. Am I correct? I'm just want to make sure.
Yes. So, some of these people, they're worth a lot of money, right? They can afford. So, my hourly rate is $350 an hour, right? Zuckerberg's attorney's hourly rates are probably more like $2,000 an hour. And he can spend that, and they will tie you up in court and drain your pockets until you can't afford to maintain the lawsuit anymore. And you just go on about your day because you couldn't afford to fight them, right? So yeah, some of these people are very difficult to fight. They're worth a lot of money. They have a lot of money to throw at it. Unless you can crowdfund and get the masses on board and angry on your behalf and donating to your legal fund, it can be difficult to go after people like Zuckerberg. But I wouldn't say it's impossible. It's just pretty difficult.
Even after he stole his friend's
Yes.
idea,
Yes. Yes.
that was pretty rough.
Yes.
Yes.
I think there was a movie about it. Just-
Yes.
I think there was a movie about it, and
Yeah, and that's
I have to
and
keep
that is
my
why
opinions
they tell
about
you that
him to myself for right
when you're sharing ideas to be
Be
careful
careful.
because not everybody is I'm not even gonna say friends, but mature enough to say, hey, that person came up with the idea, let them go,
Yeah.
you know, go ahead on it. But people are not like that. They're not honest. And
No.
that's where a patent attorney is needed, well needed, because you talk to your patent attorney about it first. And then you turn around if you want to mention it to that person, you can, mention it, you know.
And sometimes this is where contracts is essential too. Um, you know, Look, even if we're friends, right? Like it could be my parents. If we're agreeing to something, then a contract is important. And I always say a contract is it's a good method. Sometimes people are like, "Well, I'm really close with them. We verbally agree." No, you need to write it down. That way everybody is aware of their rights and responsibilities, right? Where we have a roadmap. There's nothing wrong with contracts. The contract is usually king, right? Whatever you two agree to and write down on paper, it's king. And so this is where contracts become really important as well. So that way, if they have a contract amongst the friend group, right, saying this is who owns the intellectual property. No one person owns the intellectual property. Nobody can go off and claim the intellectual property for themselves.
now. Awesome. I
Oh,
I'd
okay.
like to thank you so much for your time. Everyone she has thankfully graced us with her presence once a month. Um, we'll have lessons, we'll have outcome. I'm always loaded with questions. I always have legal questions. Okay. We'll go in depth and learn and grow together. Um, her link to have a one-on-one consultation. There is a $30 fee for 15 minutes. You can get on there and she can answer some general questions for you. Um, and her website and contact information is also in the classroom for her under mentor. You can find her under the legal mentor. Um, if you have legal questions that are in general in nature, you're just curious about, should I do an LLC? Is this copyright versus trademark? Here's my situation. Go ahead and put it in the comments, and you can tag her, and that way it'll come directly to her. She will go in and answer your questions. And I know that the holidays are up among us. So I don't know that we will have one in December. We may skip the month of December just for the holidays and then rejuvenate in 2026. Just so that I think it's so important to have work-life balance. Um, take this next month to reflect, to spend time with those that you love, and reset into the next year. And we can come into January hot and heavy and ready to learn and grow, protect our businesses as we go. Um, and thank you so much, so very much for your time and your wisdom.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And please feel free to reach out anytime. I'm happy to help. I think that it's so important to educate ourselves because when we're educated, we feel more confident when we're hiring lawyers. And I think it's really important.
Absolutely. Thank you, ladies.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And keep your eyes out. Every Monday is a mentoring Monday. So definitely check out the calendar. Um, Antoinette, feel free to jump on any of those. The AI call that we had earlier today was amazing. We talked about, oh, what is it called? And I just forgot it already. It's the tool that you walk through a process and it makes the process for you in PDF. So this might be something you could use
Yeah.
in your building your law firm so that you don't have to repeat over and over
Yes,
to
absolutely.
those people. It's just valuable information on how to automate and how to create efficiencies within your business through using technology and AI. So that office hour is free to the mentees and the mentors. So feel free to jump on any of those calls in the calendar. Um,
Absolutely.
and I'll make sure that they are feel welcome to join this call as well. My strategy call, I tried to have those in the beginning of the month so that people can plan for the coming year. This last strategy call, we did business planning, we created our plan, and we'll move on to the next steps, which is creating action. We want to plan daily methods of operation, get our operations intact. Um, that may include contracting. I don't know if that's something that you offer. We can talk about that offline, but
Sure.
if so, that may be where you might can come in and offer, reviews of contracts or contract
Sure.
creations and things like that. Um, so definitely looking forward to next year and collaborating with you further.
Absolutely. That sounds good.
Thank you, Antoinette. That
No
was
problem.
awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye,
Bye.
ladies. Y'all have a